Today on Stock Charts in Focus, we're digging into my 5 favorite features of the SharpCharts Workbench, our original award-winning price charting tool that so many of you know and love. Now we get this question all the time. Hey, how can I get more value out of Stock Charts? What are the important ways to use the SharpCharts Workbench? What am I not doing with this platform? So today we're going to answer those with a couple of my personal go-tos on the SharpCharts Workbench. So you know what it is. It's all new. It's all here. It's Stock Charts in Focus. All right, my friends, welcome back to the show. Another edition of Stock Charts in Focus. Of course, our product focus show here on the channel where we dig into the site, dive into the tools, show you around the features, and help you get more value out of Stock Charts and your membership. My name is Grayson Roze, Vice President of Operations here at StockCharts.com. So good to be with you. I want to remind everyone, especially if you are new to the show, we do this every week. Every Friday, we have a new edition of Stock Charts in Focus. And like I just said, it really is all about helping you get more out of Stock Charts. So this show airs live at 5 p.m. Eastern Time on StockCharts TV, but it's also available up on our YouTube channel after that and the new on-demand platform at StockChartsTV.com. And again, every Friday we're doing this show, really walking you through different areas of the site, different tools and features, and showing you everything that's new, what's going on, all that good stuff. If it's happening here at Stock Charts, this is the place you are going to hear about it. So today, we're going to have a lot of fun. Again, we're reaching into sort of my own toolkit, showing you some of the things that I personally use specifically on the SharpCharts Workbench. Now, SharpCharts is, of course, our original price charting tool, our legacy tool, award-winning, the one that many of you are using. I personally, believe it or not, have been using SharpCharts for over 18 years. I am a crazy kid who started looking at the markets when I was about 10, thanks to my father, but always on Stock Charts. And so I've really been using SharpCharts for over 18 years. Crazy to think about. But of course, there's so much there, so many different little corners and tips and tricks and shortcuts that you can do with that SharpCharts Workbench. So today, we're going to take a look at 5 of my favorites. These are things that I personally use every single day. Go-tos whenever someone says, hey, Grayson, how can I get more out of SharpCharts? These are some of the things that come to mind, some of the most powerful little features that you should know about. What's exciting too is we're actually going to do this again next week, but with ACP, our new interactive advanced charting platform. So a bit of a 2-show series here, these 2 Fridays back to back. Going to give you an opportunity also to sort of compare and contrast the different platforms, see the differences, see some of the similarities, and we're going to have a lot of fun in the process. So if you like today's show, remember to join me next Friday for sort of the ACP edition, 5 favorite features of ACP as well. But today, it's all about SharpCharts, so let's get right to it. So here we are on the SharpCharts Workbench. Now, what do we mean by the SharpCharts Workbench? Just want to cover this really quickly. When you go to Stock Charts, you type in a ticker symbol up at the top of the screen, and you come to this page, which you're probably familiar with. The chart in the middle is what we call a sharp chart, and everything around it is what we refer to as the SharpCharts Workbench. So the interface here up above for entering a symbol, changing the period, managing some of your chart lists, saving charts, all that good stuff. And then most importantly, all of the interface down at the bottom below the chart. This is where you can access the annotation tool. You can share things. You can save chart styles, set up your chart. Most importantly, all the different attributes, overlays, indicators, everything that you need to do to customize your charts down here. So when we say the SharpCharts Workbench, what we're referring to is all of the interface on this page that you use to customize your charts. So we're going to have some fun, like I said, digging into 5 of my favorites. Up first, we're going to start right at the top of the page with the inspector. The inspector is a personal favorite of mine, something that I sort of toggle on and off as I'm going through my analysis. So the inspector is available right here at the top of the page. You see that little inspect label and the little checkbox. So to turn it on, it's actually going to be off by default, but to turn it on, all you've got to do is click the checkbox. We've now turned on the inspect tool. What that's going to do is really give you a more powerful hover feature. So you can see when I hover over this chart now, I've actually got the crosshairs turned on. I've got that horizontal and vertical line. You can see that right there. And I also have this little hover feature that gives me a bit more information about the specific bar or candle that I am hovering over. So for instance, here we are on the 21st of September last year. I've got the open, the high, the low, the close, the volume, and I even have my Y position. So the vertical, or excuse me, the horizontal line position. So if I'm using this to kind of determine support and resistance levels, for instance, like right here, we can sort of look at the prior resistance turned into support here for Yeti. I can see exactly where that price is using that little Y label at the bottom. So this is kind of the first stage of the inspector though. And the thing that I really want to highlight is not just the hover feature, which is incredibly useful. Again, especially I personally find that I use it a lot for identifying support and resistance levels. Really, really helpful for that because it gives you that clear line or this clear vertical line. So you can actually compare sort of where you are. For instance, if we wanted to see the RSI here at the bottom of the chart, got a little bit overbought, we can see exactly where we are sort of with those date markers that span up and down the entire chart. So a really, really helpful tool just on its own on sort of this first level when you turn on the inspector and you just hover over the chart. But there's actually a lot more to the inspector that you can uncover. So when I'm hovering over it, this is what I get. But let's say I wanted to determine exactly how far Yeti had run, maybe from this low up to this high around 80. That's that sort of first resistance level that we looked at. So what I can actually do is drag my cursor down to the bottom, sort of to the start of this move. I can click and hold, and now I can drag up. When I drag vertically, when I drag my cursor up as I'm clicking and holding on the inspector, you'll see that I now have some indicators about sort of what this move is. I've got two numbers over on the left side of the screen. They're grayed out. You can see those just below the volume label though. I've got the absolute price move here, which was 37, around 37, but I also have the percentage move. So this is an incredibly helpful tool for quickly identifying percentage moves or different things that you want to sort of measure on the chart. An incredibly powerful little trick. And again, you don't really have to jump into an annotation and try to mark this up on your chart. You can just click on the inspector, scroll down, grab exactly the distance that you want to measure, click and drag vertically, and that's going to show you those values. So an incredibly powerful tool, especially for sort of measuring. I find actually that I use this a lot in sort of sideways consolidation patterns. I can see how far something has been sort of bouncing up and down. So for instance, here we had Yeti kind of drifting sideways for a couple of months. So we can actually sort of measure that move. We can see that was about a 22% drawdown sort of in that channel. So an incredibly helpful tool to use kind of on the fly for measuring those moves. Now, similarly with the inspector, you also have a horizontal drag option. So you can actually measure the number of periods. So for instance, if we wanted to measure the number of periods sort of in this sideways move for Yeti, again, we can click and drag this time horizontally. And we can see that until it sort of made that breakout, that was 59 periods. So this is actually going to count the number of bars or candles, the number of periods on the chart. So a pretty cool little tool. And there's actually a lot more sort of beneath the surface with this inspect tool. Now, again, it's really easy to turn this on right at the top. And when you're done with it, if you want to sort of get those crosshairs off, you want to go back to sort of just the cursor, all you got to do is toggle it off. There you go. So now when I'm hovering over the chart, you can see the inspector is off and all I have is my simple little cursor. So a really, really helpful tool, something that I personally toggle on and off. It will be sort of sticky. So if you turn on the inspector, the next time that you come to the SharpCharts Workbench, it should be on for you. So you can kind of set it and forget it if you want to just leave that inspect tool on all the time. But like I said, I personally like to kind of toggle it on and off when I want it. It gives me a little bit of a cleaner look when I'm just sort of initially hovering over a chart, but I can always turn that on in just a single click and get access to that more powerful tool. So that is our first. We've got the inspector right up at the top of the screen. Now, number two, we're going to scroll down below the chart for our second favorite feature here. We're going to look at the extra bars setting, one that a lot of people gloss over, but it's an incredibly powerful little feature, especially for annotations. This is where I really find that I use the extra bars feature a lot. So you can set your range for the chart. In this case, I've actually customized a lot of my charts to be an 18-month chart, 1 year and 6 months. But you can customize your range here. But as you can see on this chart, that's going to bring you sort of just up to the latest data. It's going to bring that last bar right to the right edge of the chart. So let's say you were drawing some annotations, maybe drawing some trend lines, and you want to add a little bit more space off to the right side of the chart. Maybe you want your trend lines to continue higher. Maybe you want to even use that space to add notes. There are tons and tons of different uses for adding additional space on the right side of your charts. And to do that, all you've got to do is use this little extra bars input. So let's say we wanted, for instance, to add an additional 4 weeks worth of space on the right side of this chart. Well, all we have to do is come to this extra bars. This is a daily chart, so each bar is going to represent 1 day. So 20 extra days, 4 weeks, 5 times 4, obviously. We're just going to type in 20 and hit enter. Now you can see that this chart has actually reloaded, and we've got that additional space, about 4 weeks worth of space off on the right side of this chart. So again, this is really, really helpful if we wanted to draw some annotations. We can have our trend lines kind of continue off into the future. There are some indicators, for instance, like the Ichimoku cloud, that actually sort of create that space off to the right. So you can sort of even increase that space even more. I've seen a lot of people, like I mentioned, using that extra space to actually put notes over on the right side of the chart, which I've always found to be a great, great idea. So lots of different uses for this extra space that you can add. And this is totally customizable. So let's say you actually wanted a lot more space. You could even do 100 extra bars. Now you can see that we've got a ton of space over there on the right. And again, a great space to add notes, a great place to add additional annotations. Maybe you want to put price targets out into the future. Anything that you can dream up, you can do here with that extra bars space. But a very, very cool tool, one that I find I use a lot, especially for annotations. This does get saved to the chart as well. So when you set a chart with those extra bars, that additional space will be saved to the chart or even to the chart style if you want to add that sort of on an ongoing basis. So very, very cool there with that extra bars feature. And it's super easy to add something and then remove that space. So you can just zero it out, hit update, and there we go. Now we're back to no extra space on the right side. So again, lots of different ways to use that extra bars feature, but super easy to access right down there, right next to the range menu. And all you got to do is type in the number of periods that you want to add, the amount of space that you want to add to that chart. Now, on to number 3, our third favorite feature is a go-to for me. This is something that I have on almost all my charts, especially for single securities. We're talking about the full quote. So down here, I've got the full quote option checked. So when you turn that on, what that actually adds to your chart is sort of this enhanced quote panel at the top of the screen. We'll actually turn this off for a second to show you what it looks like without full quote on. If I update this chart, this is sort of the default chart header. You can see that you do have the symbol, you do have the name and the date. You've got a little bit of price data here, but it's very, very minimal. It doesn't take over very much space at the top of the chart. It's just kind of the smallest amount of information that you would want to see. Now, when I'm looking at, for instance, an individual stock, there's a lot more that I might want to think about. For instance, market cap. What's the market cap of this stock? Well, to access that data, all you've got to do is turn on the full quote. So you can see that we've now expanded this. We've actually got the sector and industry data. We have the open, the high, the low, and the previous close right there on the left side of the full quote. We even bring in bid and ask data when the market is open. So you've got that right there. A couple of fundamental stats here with PE ratios and earnings per share. We've got market cap, which is a go-to for me, especially for flipping through individual stocks when I'm looking, for instance, at results that have come back from a scan. I love having that little market cap label right there in the full quote, right at the top of my charts. We've got last size as well when the market's open. And then we tell you a couple of other things. So whether or not this security has options available, what the dividend is, if it has one. So in this case, Yeti doesn't have one, but we give you that annual dividend and the yield right there. And then another big one for me, the scooter value. So you can add the scooter, our StockCharts technical rank. a very unique technical ranking system, gives you a sense of how strong something is. Technically, you can see here, Yeti is a 90 within the mid-cap group. Very, very strong scooter score. But you can actually chart that on your charts. You can add the scooter indicator to your charts, but sometimes you might not want the full history to it. You might just want that single value. So you actually get that up here with the full quote. You've got the scooter value right up at the top of your charts and tells you which group it's in. So in this case, Yeti, part of the mid-cap group, and again, a very, very strong scooter score at 90.6. And then over here on the right, you get your change values, your last and volume data as well. And I find that just visually, this is kind of a nice, bigger chart header, kind of a little bit more robust at the top of the chart. So personally, I also just really like having a little bit more space up there, kind of add something visually to my charts. But lots of data, lots of good stuff in the full quote, and a great reference right there on your charts, especially for things like market cap, scooter, PE ratios. That's one that I look at a lot, and dividends. It's nice to actually have that little dividend marker. So as you're kind of flipping through stocks, you can really quickly tell if something has a dividend or does not have a dividend. So that is always nice to have in the full quote as well. Now, just like many of the other features of the SharpCharts Workbench, different things that you can turn on, the cool thing is that this gets saved to your chart or to your chart style. So if you turn on the full quote and you save that chart, it's going to be on always. And if you create a chart style and you save that, again, kind of one of those chart templates that you can come back to in the future, right here in this menu, the full quote will be saved as part of that chart style. So it really is kind of something that you're setting on the chart, and it's always going to be there, just like your overlays, just like your indicators, just like your color scheme and all the other settings. So very nice to have that. You don't have to worry about kind of turning it on and off. It's just right there for you, saved straight to the chart. So now we are on to number 4, my 4th favorite feature of the SharpCharts Workbench. We're going to take a look at the zoom thumbnail. So we're starting without the zoom thumbnail on. What you can see is that on the right side of this chart, there is nothing. It's a standard chart. We've got the price data running right up to the right edge. And in this case, actually a good example because we're looking at 1 year and 6 months, an 18-month chart. So we're getting a decent amount of data in this chart. And each of these candlesticks actually gets pretty small. It's a little bit tricky to see kind of what's going on here. It looks like Yeti has bounced off the 50-day moving average. Maybe the 20 period is in there somewhere, but it's a little tough to see. So in those cases, we have something called the zoom thumbnail here in SharpCharts. Very, very easy to turn on, just like the full quote in that exact same row. Over here, we've got the zoom thumbnail. I'm going to turn that on and hit update. And this chart is going to look a little bit different now. So what the zoom thumbnail does is it basically takes the right side of that chart, the last couple of bars or candles, and it zooms it in and blows it up for you to see right there on the right side of your chart. So as you can see, we've got our chart here, sort of the standard look that we were just looking at. But over on the right side of that, we've actually got the last couple of sessions zoomed in, sort of blown up, and it makes it a lot easier to see what's going on, especially when we have a move like this where we've got Yeti kind of chopping around some moving averages. It's really tough to see it. Well, here we can see everything very, very clearly. We can see there's that 50 period moving average, the solid red line. We can see Yeti bounced off it almost exactly, had one session right below, but bounced off that 50 period moving average very, very cleanly, actually. We can see our 20 period moving average in there as well. Now I keep those kind of grayed out on my charts, and they're actually dashed lines instead of solid. But we can see that right in there. We can see where that 20 period is. Yeti kind of chopping around that 20 period moving average. So all of this becomes a lot easier to see when we turn on the zoom thumbnail. Now this also works for indicators. So for instance, here in the RSI, this is actually pretty clear, pretty easy to see at the moment. But sometimes when you want to see exactly where the RSI is, again, you get kind of that blown up view, that zoomed in view right there on the right side of the screen. You get the same with this price performance line up top as well. So we can see exactly how that's moving, exactly where it is. So having this kind of blown up view on the right side of the screen, very, very helpful, especially for the price panel. But sometimes when you have more complicated indicators moving around, for instance, a MACD crossover, if you want to sort of really zoom into what's going on with the MACD, this can be incredibly helpful to have it kind of blown up in that side panel for you right there on the right side of your chart. Again, something that's super easy to turn on. All you've got to do is check that little box and hit update. And just like the full quote, just like all the other settings that we're talking about today, it's going to be saved to that chart or saved to that chart style. So easy to toggle on and off. That's kind of how I like to use the zoom thumbnail when I have something that I want to really sort of narrow in on. For instance, Yeti chopping around the 50 period moving average. I can turn it on. And then after I've sort of done my thing, I can actually turn that off and get back to my sort of clean view with nothing over there on the right side. So just like the inspector, I like to toggle it on and off, but you might want that on all the time. Makes it a little bit easier to see what's going on there. Also great for longer term charts. So for instance, if you have a long-term weekly chart, which brings in sort of, that long-term perspective, but then you really want to zoom into what's going on in the last couple of sessions there on that weekly chart, makes it a lot easier to see. Same goes for monthly, or you can use this on the intraday charts to see exactly what's going on the very, very narrow price action. So lots of different uses of that zoom thumbnail, a great feature to turn on and try on the SharpCharts Workbench. Now we are on to number 5, our 5th and final favorite feature of the SharpCharts Workbench. And this one's going to be a little bit different. What we're talking about here is all of the things under the advanced options area for overlays and for indicators. So I've actually closed these down for now, but down here in the bottom of the SharpCharts Workbench, you can see in the overlays and the indicators section, we have these little green arrows for advanced options. So I'm going to open these up and show you what you get with these. This is something that we've highlighted quite a bit on the show in the past. We've talked a lot about different ways to sort of get more out of your indicators and your overlays using some of these advanced options. So my 5th and favorite feature and 5th and favorite sort of suggestion for you, shortcut tip, any of that, is really just to get to know the advanced options. There's a lot here. There's a lot of power here. You can customize, like we were looking at earlier. I've customized kind of, the look of my different moving averages. So for me, the 50 period and the 200 are sort of the primary moving averages. And some of those other ones I've actually set as dashed lines in different colors. And I've actually sort of dulled down the opacity. So sort of faded them out a little bit. All of those are things that you can do under the advanced options section here on the overlays area and the indicators area. So I would say get to know some of these advanced options. Start to play around with all of the different customizations that you can make. Color options, style options, opacity options, or down here in the indicators section, you've got different height options. So for instance, you might want to make your indicator panels a little bit taller. I've actually done that here with the price performance line. So I have a relative strength line at the top of my chart, something that I've talked a lot about on the show. This is the symbol versus VTI, the Vanguard Total Index. So this tells me, is this security outperforming the total market or is it underperforming the total market? That is a very, very important indicator for me. So I've actually made this panel a little bit taller. It's got a 0.5 height set on it. All of those heights are relative to the main price panel. So what this means is that this is going to be half the height of the main price panel. So you can make things bigger, you can make things smaller, you can really sort of start to adjust those indicator heights. And again, you've got similar options. So you've got all your style settings, your different colors, your opacity settings. And the last one that we're actually going to highlight here before we wrap up the show, you can add overlays to indicators. The advanced options area is where you can do that. You can really start to get creative, positioning different indicators, different overlays around your charts, moving things up and down, and even setting overlays on some of your indicators. So there's a lot of power to the advanced options section. Definitely want to remind you, go spend a little bit of time playing around with that. Get to know the advanced options that you can do. Today, we're actually going to take a quick look at some of those settings that you can do. We're going to have a little bit of fun playing around with some of the settings that you can add to your indicators. So for instance, I've done something kind of tricky here with the RSI, you might have noticed. Now, in the RSI, we've got sort of an upper bound and we've got a lower bound. When we go above 70, we consider that to be overbought territory. When we go below 30, we consider that to be oversold territory. So because I've got those key levels in mind, now the RSI does, shade itself above and below those levels, but I actually have customized most of my charts with a green line across at 70 and a red line across at 30, indicating overbought green and oversold red. So to do that, I've actually used the advanced options area in the indicator section. So you can see here, I've got the RSI indicator. I've got the overlay set to horizontal line. And in the parameters box, what I've typed in is 70:green. So that's going to tell the workbench to put a horizontal line at 70 and to color it green. Then I've done a comma, as you can see in here, and we've done 30:red. So 70:green, comma, 30:red. That is going to tell the SharpCharts workbench to put two horizontal lines on the RSI, one at 70, and that's going to be a green line, and one at 30, that is going to be a red line. So a little bit tricky. This is a pretty advanced setting here on the RSI, pretty advanced little SharpCharts trick that we're showing off. But you can do these kinds of things under that advanced options section. Let's do this in real time. Let's put a moving average, for instance, on that price performance line. So we can come over here. It's very, very easy to do this. All you've got to do, open up this menu. Let's say we wanted to add a 50-period moving average to that relative strength line at the top of this chart. We've got that set in here. It actually defaults, in this case, to 50. And if we wanted to make that red, you can see I've done this before because my autocomplete is coming on. But we can do 50:red, type that in, and hit update. Now, what we're going to end up with at the top of this chart, as you can see, is a 50-period moving average of that relative strength line. Pretty cool how you can just add these overlays to different indicators on your chart. And you can go crazy. You can add really anything that you can think of to these different indicators. So the point is there's a lot of power, a lot that you can do with those advanced options sections in the overlays and indicators sections of the SharpCharts Workbench. So spend a little bit of time, open these up, click those green arrows, open those up, and spend a little bit of time getting to know what you can do with some of those advanced options. Well, that is our show for today. 5 of my absolute favorite SharpCharts features, things that I use every day. We hit on the inspector. We talked about how to turn that on, get a little bit more out of that sort of crosshairs and the distance measuring capabilities that you can build in to your charting. Really easy to toggle that on and off. Number 2, we talked about extra bars. We talked about how to add additional space on the right side of your charts. 3, we hit on the full quote. A favorite feature of mine, brings in a lot more data to those charts, adds that little panel at the top of your charts. Number 4, we talked about the zoom thumbnail, zooming in on the right side of the chart, adding that sort of blown up window into the price panel and all the different indicators that you have on your chart. And number 5, of course, we hit on the advanced options. Kind of a catch-all, but we told you, you got to spend a little bit of time getting to know some of those different advanced options you have available to you for your overlays and for your indicators on the SharpCharts Workbench. A lot that we covered today, and this is kind of a disappointing show for me, I will admit, because there's so much more that we could cover. There are probably 500 things that I could tell you about the SharpCharts Workbench, but today we've touched on 5 of my absolute favorites. Like I said, these are things that I use every day. And some of the go-tos when someone says, hey, Grayson, how can I get more value out of SharpCharts? What should I be using? What are some of the settings and little tips and tricks that you can give me? Shortcuts, ways to get more out of SharpCharts. These are 5 of the things that I always like to tell people about. So hopefully you've had fun seeing some of the things that I use. Hopefully this has given you some ideas for some of these things that you can incorporate into your own use of the SharpCharts Workbench. Now, like we mentioned at the start of the show, this is kind of the first of 2, a 2-show series that we're doing of 5 favorite things. So today we did SharpCharts. Next Friday, we're going to do a very similar show, but we're going to do that for ACP, our new interactive advanced charting platform. We'll run through 5 of my favorite features of that new advanced charting platform, 5 favorite ACP tools. And again, tips, tricks, shortcuts along the way, lots to cover next week as we do a very similar episode for ACP. Again, it'll give you a great sense of kind of the similarities, the differences, times that you might want to use SharpCharts, times that you might want to use ACP and explore some of the things over there. So we're going to have some fun in the process. If you're using ACP, it's going to give you a ton of value. If you're using SharpCharts, it might give you a sense of what you can do with that new advanced charting platform. So remember, join me next Friday. We're going to do sort of the second of two in this little 2-show series that we're doing. And of course, along the way, we're going to have a lot of fun digging into 5 of my favorite features over there. My name is Grayson Roze, though, Vice President of Operations here at StockCharts. I want to thank you again for joining me on today's show. It's been a blast to be with you. Always fun to sort of dig into my own toolkit, show you around some of the things that I use, and give you some ideas for how you can incorporate some of those tips and tricks and shortcuts into your own approach, your own process here on StockCharts. Remember, we do this show every Friday, 5 p.m. Eastern Time on StockCharts TV, also up on our YouTube channel after that, or the on-demand platform at StockChartsTV.com. Lots of ways to watch, and we always include this in our Chart Watchers newsletter. So if you're not subscribed to that, by the way, expert content, lots of videos, lots of content, free stuff coming out every Saturday. You can sign up at StockCharts.com/newsletter, or go to the bottom of pretty much any page around StockCharts. There's a little sign up box there. But you can join that free newsletter. We send out content from Dave Keller, Martin Pring, John Murphy, Arthur Hill, all of our expert contributors, and we usually highlight this show in there as well. So another way to follow along, we'll actually send you a link to it every Saturday right in your inbox. Thank you again for joining me, though. I will see you next week for the ACP edition of my 5 favorite features. And until then, chart on, my friends.
Hey guys, Dave Keller here with StockCharts.com. Thanks so much for watching our video. If you enjoyed it, and we hope you did, hit the like button right below. Also, we have so much new content every day. Consider subscribing to the channel. Just hit the subscribe button in the video or right below. Thanks for watching. Stay safe. Have a fantastic day.